we're in good company today with Nancy Daniels, voice coach. She can be found online at www.voicedynamic.com. Nancy, thank you for joining us today.
You are very welcome, Kathy.
I want to start by saying this. When people think about self-improvement, quite often they think about their physical appearance and they think about what they can do to look more credible. But quite often, what they forget about is their voice, which, as you well know, can be an incredibly powerful tool for imparting an impression on someone. And I want to start at the beginning with you and talk a little bit about where your passion for the human voice started.
Probably. I was in graduate school and I was studying music composition. When you study music, whatever form, you will have an instrument. And mine was singing voice, not good. It was not a great voice, but I remember the day my singing professor walked in and she said, she played a note on the piano and she said, "This is where your habitual voice pitch is." And I thought, okay. She went down about 4 whole steps, but she said, "But this is where your real voice is." And from that moment on, I made the change. It was like that because I knew how to breathe. And that's the first thing I teach people, how to breathe with the support of the diaphragm, which you learn to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember waiting on tables at this exquisite restaurant outside of Baltimore. We had to be able to explain exactly how the food was prepared. And I thought, I'm going to sell more food with this voice than with my old voice. And it worked. My tips went up. And I got the jobs I wanted. After that, I moved to New York City. I got the jobs I wanted because I sounded more mature than I was. I sounded like I knew what I was talking about.
Credibility.
Yeah, absolutely credibility.
Mm-hmm.
I sounded confident. I sounded composed. They didn't know that what I knew or didn't know. It was really quite an experience.
And where did you take it from there? So I take it you did not pursue a career singing.
Well, no, and I was not going to. I wanted to write on Broadway with Stephen Sondheim.
Okay.
He didn't know that. That was my goal. What he wrote, I would hear it and I go, man, that's what I would do. I really wanted to compose. But I ended up moving to, not long after I got married, I moved to Canada because of the marriage. And I was approached by the University of Western Ontario to teach voice, speaking voice, to the graduate students of journalism. That was really eye-opening for me because I didn't realize, I knew I had made the change with my voice, but I had never considered, wow, this is something, everybody could use this.
Mm-hmm.
Read about it, developed my own techniques, and then I approached the common man. People that didn't know about this, I started it as a business in Canada, moved back down here many years later and continued.
So how many years have you been coaching? Approximately?
30.
Wow. And if you could tell us, generally speaking, who comes to you now? Is it overwhelmingly male, female, both, young, seasoned?
It is more likely men, which is interesting. In Canada, it was women.
Mm-hmm.
But here in the States, it is men. For a time there, my number one target was young men between the ages of 18 and 31 who wanted to sound better in bars.
Okay.
I hate to say that, but it's true. But I would say that people in their 30s and 40s, people that don't like their voice, people that have vocal abuse, people that are nervous making presentations, people that are soft-spoken, people with heavy accents, a lot, especially today. We have such a wonderful melting pot, and people realize they need to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're speaking so softly, they're not being heard. And it's holding them back from where they want to go with their careers.
Amazing. And when they approach you, do you hear a common theme at all? What do they say? Do they simply say, I hate my voice? Or do they know what's wrong?
A lot of them really do know what's wrong, but a lot of them are more surprised when they hear themselves on video and they say, oh my gosh, they didn't realize. So in that sense, I'll get a lot of people that say, oh, I heard myself on video. As much as we use our cell phones just to record things, a lot of people still don't see themselves. They're not aware of it until they're hit with that recording. But it could be somebody that's had a sore throat or they're losing their voice. I have a number of people right now, they're losing their voice before the end of the day. Why? Because they've been pushing too hard from the throat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for many, many reasons. I'm trying to think of just in the last few years. I had a fellow that was in his 70s, retired, but he was going to his family reunion down south, and he had to run the family reunion and make a speech. And he worked with me for that one reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it means a lot to people. Now that, we're in a situation where less is happening in person, are you doing most of your coaching online?
Yes, I am. And I'm doing a lot more of it because people are working from home. They find they have the time, they've been in the past been interested in the voice. Well, now they actually do have the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we have it coming in that direction. I'm not doing my workshops, obviously. I've got one on hold from back in March.
Mm-hmm.
That will be eventually rescheduled. Who knows when?
Mm-hmm. Right. And when they work with you, Nancy, about is this this is one-on-one coaching, and about how long do they work with you?
Generally, it's 5 one-hour sessions, generally held weekly. Some people want to do it faster. Some people want to do it a little slower.
Mm-hmm.
Depends.
And at the end of their time with you, what do you feel they get out of it?
The number one thing.
I'm going to ask this question two ways. What do they feel they get out of it? And what do you feel they get out of it?
Well, I would have to agree with them. They're going to say, number one, they feel better about themselves. They feel more confident. There's no doubt about it. Originally, I went into this, let's have great voices, let's just do this. And I saw, and I have to tell you, one of my very first private clients back in Canada, she was so upset standing in front of a camera. Now, remember, it's just this woman and I. She walked out of the room because she couldn't stand to be recorded. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, by the end of those sessions, now they were private, they were held in my studio in those days. In her before and after, she looked so much better in the after. And this was new to me. She said, look how much better I look. Well, the truth was she stood taller. She looked better because she felt better about herself. And she had no problem then addressing a group. None. And that was because of the breathing, because of discovering the real voice.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those things make one feel so much better. I remember one fella came with his sister from New York, and they worked with me here in my studio in my home. And they were very young. They were still in their 20s. And he said, I own my voice. And that's a powerful statement. When you have that control, and he said to me, I own my voice. I knew this is great. And they take it and then they run with it.
Isn't it true? It's so much or as much about how you're saying it versus what you're saying, right? People get a certain impression from you, regardless of what the words are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I know there are studies that show how important how a message is delivered is, and this is your most important tool for delivering a message. I know your before and afters are very powerful. I'll try to include some at the end of this video. I know they're great. They're all over your website. You have a presence on YouTube as well. And I have to say, tens of thousands of views. You were an early YouTube poster. And it is quite amazing to see the differences from both men and women. It's just astounding. You really do give them you re-engineer their voice. And it's and it is amazing how much, as I said at the beginning, how much emphasis we put on, oh, do I look okay? Do I have the right makeup? And men have their own issues as well. And it is absolutely amazing. We know that so much of this confidence and image comes from within, but we don't realize it can be from within your voice. So this is
Many years ago, Barbara Walters interviewed Kathleen Turner. And she said, oh, that voice, that low, wonderful voice. And Kathleen Turner said, I don't understand. A woman will spend $5,000 on an outfit. Her hair will be perfect, her makeup, her nails, and then she'll talk in a voice like this. She said, why doesn't she spend some of that on voice training?
right.
I couldn't agree more. And I don't understand. Think about the telephone. There is no visual, unless you're on FaceTime, of course. But in a normal business situation, you don't see the person on the other end of the line. How are you judging that person? Indeed, by how they sound. Yes.
Yeah, it is amazing. So if you're not sure if your voice could use work, and frankly, in my humble opinion, probably 8 out of 10 voices could use work. What are some things to consider if it hasn't really occurred to you yet? Hey, it may be your voice. For example, you're not capturing people's attention in meetings. People aren't following you. What are some giveaways that might indicate to people that their voice could use a tune-up?
Well, if you're asked to repeat yourself a lot, there's a problem. And it's either because you're soft-spoken. Well, it could be a number of reasons. You could be soft-spoken. You could be a mumbler. You're a tall man. There's a possibility you mumble.
Right.
You may be a woman with lockjaw, where we get very tense and it all occurs in here. And so that your words are not being heard clearly. Or you may have a heavy accent. And I'm talking even in the States here, it could be a heavy Southern drawl that people don't understand. Things like that should give you an idea. Or if you give that presentation and you're told you speak in a monotone, that's another reason to look into voice training, because the voice coach is going to work with you on that aspect of your delivery as well.
Is speaking too loudly a common?
Oh, yes.
And,
oh, yeah.
Right, especially now where Zoom calls, teleconferences, trying to jump into the conversation, you just keep going up and up and up, and pretty soon you're screaming at people.
Right. Yeah, that is a big issue, although it is more common that someone is soft-spoken than too loud. It is. But to be honest, neither is great. If you're too loud, then you're hurting the ears of the other individual. If they have to pull that phone away, for example, or in the webinar, if they're trying to decrease their volume level because it's too loud, then there's a problem. But there are other issues as well. Just the fact that if you've heard your voice and you don't like it, you have a better voice in there. And I call it your real voice. I'm not going to do something and give you something different. We're just going to go in there and find what should have been. And have you use that voice.
Do you run into what is sometimes referred to as little girl voice?
Oh.
Where women, literally grown women, sound like little girls.
Thank you. You keep bringing in new. Absolutely. I can't tell you how many have called, especially in the past, where they would phone you and you would think you were talking to a 12-year-old. That is so common.
That one breaks my heart when I hear it.
Yeah.
It does, because I feel like, saying, oh, my friend, you are selling yourself short. You really are. Yeah, that one breaks my heart in particular.
It's really a great problem, because you do not have you lack the credibility. I had a woman, I've worked with so many hundreds of women with a childlike sound, but one was I was down in South Carolina, and we were in a workshop, and when she found her voice in the corner, she was not being promoted. She worked in a library, a college library, university library. She was not being promoted because she sounded like she was a 6-year-old. It was a terrible, terrible voice. And when I had her stand in the corner and find her voice, the change was amazing. It was awesome. She cried.
Wow.
She cried, which of course made me cry. I cry a lot when I hear voices, trust me. But she said, for 40 years, I never knew. And that's why I want people to realize I'm not trying to give them a deep voice. I'm not trying to give them something they don't already have. It's in there. They just have to learn how to bring it out. And it's easy. It really is.
And what do you think are some of the reasons that people have not gone down a path where they're using their authentic voice?
Because as we develop, it's interesting, all mammals on Earth breathe with the support of the diaphragm, and that includes man. We are born breathing correctly. As we develop, and sometime during those developmental years, we stop the breathing from the diaphragm, we revert to upper chest. And that upper chest breathing means that then the voice is going to come from up here instead of from the chest area. That's the difference.
Interesting. So it's just the way it is, but it can be corrected.
Oh.
And yeah, I'll wrap up with this. Again, I'm going to make sure that our viewers have your contact information. I really can't say enough about your work. The before and afters are really astounding. And I do encourage people to really think about your voice and think about if it's all that you want it to be, and think about how you're received by others. Are you getting the reception that you feel you deserve and you feel you should be getting, and for some reason you're not? And when you think about what that could be, think about your voice. So Nancy, thank you again for spending some time with us today. This was really educational and very interesting, and I wish you every continued success with your practice.
You are so very welcome. This was a lot of fun.
The senior partner studied the resume for the 100th time and again found nothing he disliked about Mitchell Y. McDear, at least not on paper. He had the brains, the ambition, the good looks. And he was hungry. With his background, he had to be. The senior partner studied the resume for the 100th time and again found nothing he disliked about Mitchell Y. McDear, at least not on paper. He had the brains, the ambition, and the good looks. And he was hungry. With his background, he had to be.
The weather in Vermont is, at best, unpredictable, and it being late August, it was somewhat reassuring that the menacing nimbostratus cloud, slowly approaching from the northeast, wasn't snow. Unfortunately, that had been the only positive aspect of the entire past week. The weather in Vermont is, at best, unpredictable, and it being late August, it was somewhat reassuring that the menacing nimbostratus cloud, slowly approaching from the northeast, wasn't snow. Unfortunately, that had been the only positive aspect of the entire past week.